She thought it was her son who called 911, but it was the billionaire CEO who shattered her heart. "You knew I was pregnant and you still left?" Samantha's voice cracked as tears streamed down her face, her hands trembling with a decade of buried pain. "It was the hardest thing I've ever done," Maxwell Hart confessed, his composed billionaire facade crumbling before her eyes. "But I had to protect you both from my father's world. They would have killed you, Sam. So instead you let me believe you never loved me? That I wasn't enough." She stepped closer, her voice barely a whisper. "For 10 years, I've raised our son alone, telling him his father was away on important business, when all along you were hiding a truth that changed everything. Have you ever wondered what it would take for someone to walk away from the love of their life? What secrets could be so dangerous that abandoning your pregnant girlfriend seemed like the only option? And what happens when those secrets finally come to light after a decade of silence? If you've ever had your heart broken by someone you thought would never hurt you, give this video a like. And if you believe that true love sometimes requires the ultimate sacrifice, subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison for more stories that will touch your soul. I'm Mr. Harrison, and today I'm sharing the remarkable story of how a single phone call shattered 10 years of carefully constructed walls, forcing two people to confront the painful truth that had kept them apart. The 911 call came on a Tuesday afternoon. Samantha Williams was in the middle of preparing dinner when her phone rang, displaying the emergency number that made her heart stop. Her first thought was Zane, her 10-year-old son who should have been home from school an hour ago. When she answered with trembling fingers, the voice on the other end wasn't her son's as she'd initially feared. Instead, it was a voice she'd spent years trying to forget. Deep, commanding, and hauntingly familiar. "Samantha? It's Max. You need to come to Memorial Hospital right away. It's Zane." Her kitchen suddenly felt too small, the walls closing in as memories crashed through the carefully constructed barriers she'd built. Maxwell Hart, the man who had promised her everything, then vanished without explanation, leaving her alone and pregnant with their child. "What happened? What did you do?" Her voice came out as a whisper, fear and fury battling for dominance. "There's been an accident at his school. I was listed as his emergency contact in his records." His voice softened. "He's going to be okay, but he's asking for you." "How dare you?" she hissed, already grabbing her keys and rushing toward the door. "How dare you show up after 10 years and—" "Sam, please. I'll explain everything. Just get here." The line went dead, and Samantha stood frozen for a moment, her heart hammering against her ribs. 10 years of silence. 10 years of raising their son alone. 10 years of wondering what she'd done wrong, why he'd left without a word. And now, with a single phone call, Maxwell Hart had shattered the fragile peace she'd built for herself and Zane. The drive to Memorial Hospital was a blur of red lights and honking horns as Samantha weaved through traffic, her mind racing faster than her car. How did Max even know about Zane? She'd never told him about the pregnancy. After he disappeared, she'd tried everything to find him, called his friends, his workplace, even hired a private investigator with money she couldn't afford. It was as if Maxwell Hart had simply ceased to exist. Eventually, she'd stopped looking, stopped hoping, started building a life without him. Every morning for the past decade, Samantha had risen before dawn to prepare Zane's lunch before heading to her job as an elementary school librarian. Every evening, she'd help him with homework, listen to his stories about school, and tuck him into bed with a kiss on his forehead. She'd attended every parent-teacher conference alone, cheered at every little league game from the bleachers by herself, and fielded Zane's increasingly difficult questions about his absent father. "He's away on important business," she'd tell him, the lie becoming easier with repetition. "Someday he'll come back when his work is done." It was kinder than the truth, or what she believed was the truth. That Maxwell Hart, rising star at a prestigious investment firm, had decided that a simple girl from a small town wasn't worth the commitment of fatherhood. That the man who had once looked at her like she hung the moon had simply grown tired of playing house and moved on to bigger, better things. The hospital corridors seemed endless as Samantha raced through them, her mind a whirlwind of questions and fears. When she finally reached the pediatric wing, she spotted him immediately, tall, imposing, his dark hair now threaded with silver at the temples. He wore an impeccably tailored suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent, a stark reminder of the world he inhabited, a world he had never invited her to join. "Where is he?" she demanded, not bothering with greetings. Max turned, and for a moment, something raw and vulnerable flashed across his face. "Room 312. He's sleeping. Broken arm and a mild concussion from falling off the playground equipment." Samantha pushed past him, needing to see her son, to confirm with her own eyes that he was okay. Zane lay small against the white hospital sheets, his arm in a cast, his face peaceful in sleep. The sight of him, so vulnerable, so precious, brought tears to her eyes. "The doctors say he'll make a full recovery," Max said quietly from behind her. "I got here as fast as I could when the school called." "Why would they call you?" Samantha asked, not taking her eyes off Zane. "You're not in his records. You've never been in his life. I've always been listed as his father, Sam. I made sure of that before I left." She whirled to face him, anger finally winning over fear. "Before you left? You mean before you disappeared without a word? Before you abandoned us?" "I never abandoned you," he said, his voice low and intense. "I left to protect you." Samantha laughed bitterly. "Is that what you tell yourself to sleep at night? That walking out on your pregnant girlfriend was some noble sacrifice?" A nurse appeared in the doorway, her expression concerned. "Everything okay in here? We need to keep voices down in the pediatric ward." "Everything's fine," Max assured her smoothly, the practiced charm of a CEO slipping into place. "We'll step outside." Once in the hallway, Samantha crossed her arms, creating a physical barrier between them. "You have exactly 2 minutes to explain why you're here before I call security." "I never stopped watching over you both," Max said, his voice dropping to ensure their privacy. "I've made sure you had everything you needed: the house, Zane's college fund, the anonymous scholarship that paid for your master's degree." Samantha's eyes widened. "That was you? All this time?" "I couldn't be in your lives, but I could make sure you were taken care of." His expression darkened. "My father would have destroyed you both if he knew how much I loved you." "Your father?" "The investment banker." Confusion clouded her features. "My father was never just an investment banker, Sam." Max ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so achingly familiar it made her heart twist. "There are things about my past, about my family, that I couldn't tell you then. Things that would have put you and our child in danger." "What are you talking about?" Max glanced at the sleeping form of their son through the window, then gently took her elbow, guiding her to the small sitting area just outside the room. "My father wasn't just a businessman. The Hart Empire wasn't built on stock options and smart investments. It was built on blood money." Samantha stared at him, trying to process his words. "What are you saying?" "My father was involved with organized crime. The legitimate businesses were just fronts for money laundering, arms dealing, human trafficking." His voice was flat, emotionless, as if he'd rehearsed this confession countless times. "When I met you, I was trying to distance myself from all of it. I thought I could start fresh, be the man you deserved." The pristine hospital walls seemed to spin around Samantha as she struggled to reconcile the man she'd loved with this new revelation. The Max she knew had been kind, gentle, ambitious in the most ordinary ways. They'd met at a coffee shop where she worked during college. He was the customer who always left generous tips and stayed until closing, claiming he worked better surrounded by the ambient noise of strangers. Their romance had been swift but not superficial. Within months, they were living together in a modest apartment, planning a future that seemed bright with possibility. He'd never flaunted wealth or connections, never given her any reason to suspect his family was anything but what he claimed: successful but unremarkable. "Then why leave?" she whispered, the anger in her voice giving way to confusion. "Why not tell me the truth?" "Because they found out about you, about us." Max's eyes darkened with remembered fear. "My father's associates made it clear that if I didn't return to the fold, they would use you to ensure my cooperation." So I made a deal. I would come back and help transition the businesses to legitimate operations if they left you alone. You could have told me, Samantha said, her voice breaking. You could have given me a choice. And what choice would that have been, Sam? To lie looking over your shoulder? To raise our child in fear? He shook his head. I couldn't do that to you. So I left. And I made sure they believed I didn't care about you anymore. Samantha felt dizzy with the implications. All these years, she'd believed he'd simply grown tired of her, that she hadn't been enough. The possibility that he'd left to protect her had never crossed her mind. When did you find out about Zane? She asked, suddenly realizing the timeline. The day I left, Max admitted, his composure cracking. You left the test in the bathroom trash. I saw it before I walked out the door. The revelation hit her like a physical blow. You knew I was pregnant and you still left? It was the hardest thing I've ever done, he said, his voice rough with emotion. But it made my resolve stronger. I had to clean up my family's mess. Had to make sure our child would never be touched by that world. If you've ever had to make an impossible choice between love and duty, hit that like button right now. And if you believe that sometimes the greatest acts of love require the deepest sacrifices, subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison for more stories that will touch your heart and soul. A soft moan from Zane's room interrupted their conversation. Samantha immediately moved toward the sound, maternal instinct overriding everything else. Max followed, keeping a respectful distance as they entered the room. Mom! Zane's eyes fluttered open, disoriented and cloudy from pain medication. I'm here, sweetheart. Samantha rushed to his side, gently brushing dark hair from his forehead, hair that matched Max's exactly. How are you feeling? My arm hurts, Zane mumbled. Then his gaze drifted past her to the tall figure standing by the door. His eyes widened slightly. Who's that? The question hung in the air, heavy with a decade of absence and lies. Samantha felt Max's eyes on her, waiting, not presuming to answer. This was her decision to make. And now? Why are you here now? Samantha asked Max quietly, her back to him as she held Zane's good hand. Max stepped forward, close enough to be heard but still maintaining distance. Because it's over. My father died 6 months ago. The last of his associates are either in prison or have accepted the legitimate direction of the company. There's no more danger. He hesitated, then added softly. And because I never stopped loving you, Sam. Not for a single day. Samantha felt tears burning behind her eyes. 10 years of anger and hurt couldn't be erased by a single explanation, no matter how compelling. And yet, looking at Max now, seeing the pain etched in the lines of his face, she couldn't deny the truth in his words. I don't know what to say, she admitted. This is a lot to process. I know, and I don't expect you to forgive me, or to welcome me back into your life. Max's gaze drifted to their son, who was watching their exchange with curious eyes. But I'd like a chance to know him, to be the father I should have been all along. Mom! Zane's voice pulled her attention back. Who is he? Samantha took a deep breath, making a decision that would change all their lives. Zane, this is your father. Max's head snapped up, his eyes meeting hers in shock and gratitude. She gave him a small nod. Not forgiveness, not yet, but permission. Permission to step into the role he'd left vacant for too long. Hello, Zane, Max said, his voice gentle as he approached the bed. I've waited a very long time to meet you. Zane looked between them, confusion and curiosity warring on his young face. Mom said you were away on important business. I was, Max confirmed, carefully sitting on the edge of the bed. Very important business that kept me away for too long. But I'm back now, if that's okay with you. Zane considered this with the straightforward logic of childhood. Will you be staying? The question hung in the air, directed at Max but resonating with Samantha as well. Would he stay this time? Could she trust him not to disappear again, not to break both their hearts? Max looked at her, then back at their son. Yes, he said firmly. I'm not going anywhere this time. As Zane began peppering Max with questions about where he'd been and what he did, Samantha stepped back, watching the interaction with a mixture of caution and hope. The wounds of the past wouldn't heal overnight. Trust, once broken, took time to rebuild. But as she observed Max with their son, the gentle way he explained things, the reverence in his touch when he signed Zane's cast, the unmistakable love in his eyes, she felt something shift inside her. Not forgiveness, not yet, but possibility. The doctor arrived an hour later to discharge Zane, explaining the care instructions for his cast and concussion. Max listened intently, asking detailed questions that Samantha herself hadn't thought to ask. When it came time to leave, an awkward silence fell over them. "I've called my driver," Max said finally. "He can take you both home." "We can manage," Samantha replied automatically. The independence of 10 years a hard habit to break. "Please, Sam. It's the least I can do." His eyes held hers. "And maybe we could talk more? There's so much I need to explain." Zane looked up at his mother, his expression hopeful. "Can he come over, Mom? Please." Samantha hesitated, torn between protecting her heart and giving her son what he clearly wanted. "All right," she conceded. "But just for a little while. You need rest." The ride to their modest suburban home was quiet, Zane dozing against Samantha's shoulder in the back seat of the luxury SUV, while Max sat across from them, his expression unreadable. When they arrived, Max carried their sleeping son inside, following Samantha's directions to Zane's bedroom. As he gently laid Zane on his bed, Max paused, taking in the room that told the story of his son's life: baseball trophies, science fair ribbons, a bookshelf overflowing with adventure novels and comic books. His fingers traced a framed photo on the nightstand. Zane at about 5 years old, grinning widely with a missing front tooth. "You've done an amazing job with him," Max said quietly as they stepped into the hallway. "He's incredible." "He is," Samantha agreed, leading him to the kitchen. "He's smart, kind, brave. Everything I could have hoped for." "Everything you made him," Max corrected. "I had no part in that." Samantha filled the electric kettle, needing something to do with her hands. "You said you've been watching over us. What did you mean?" Max leaned against the counter, maintaining a respectful distance. "After I left, I set up a trust in Zane's name. The house payments, the college fund, your scholarship, it all came from that trust, managed by lawyers who had no connection to my father. I always wondered how I qualified for that scholarship," Samantha said, shaking her head. "It seemed too perfect, covering tuition, books, even childcare. I wanted to give you both everything I could without putting you in danger." Max's voice was heavy with regret. "It was never enough, but it was all I could do. And now your father is dead." Samantha set 2 mugs on the counter with more force than necessary. "Convenient timing." Max's expression hardened. "There was nothing convenient about it. I spent 10 years systematically dismantling his criminal empire from the inside, gathering evidence, turning key players, redirecting assets into legitimate businesses. Do you have any idea what that cost me?" "I know exactly what it cost me," Samantha shot back. "Raising a child alone, explaining to a little boy why his father never came to his birthday parties, crying myself to sleep wondering what I did wrong." "You did nothing wrong," Max said fiercely. "Nothing. You were perfect, Sam. That's why I had to protect you. By lying? By disappearing." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Do you know what Zane asked me on his 8th birthday? He asked if you didn't visit because he wasn't good enough. Because he'd done something wrong." Max flinched as if she'd struck him. "I never wanted that. I thought a clean break would be easier than the truth." "Easier for whom?" Samantha demanded. "For you? Because it certainly wasn't easier for us." The kettle clicked off, steam rising between them like the heated words they'd exchanged. Samantha busied herself making tea, needing the familiar ritual to calm her racing heart. "I'm sorry," Max said finally, his voice barely audible. "I made the best decision I could with the information I had. I was 26, terrified, and facing an impossible choice. If I could go back and do it differently, But you can't, Samantha finished for him, handing him a mug. None of us can. They sat at the small kitchen table, the same one where Samantha had helped Zane with homework every night for years. The normalcy of the scene, tea mugs, the refrigerator humming softly, a child sleeping down the hall, contrasted sharply with the extraordinary conversation taking place. Tell me everything, Samantha said. From the beginning. I need to understand. Max took a deep breath, his hands wrapped around the warm mug. My father, Richard Hart, built his business empire in the 1980s. On the surface, it was all legitimate real estate, shipping, finance. But underneath, he was moving drugs through his shipping lines, laundering money through his real estate holdings, and using his financial firms to hide it all. And you knew nothing about this growing up? I suspected something wasn't right, Max admitted. The late-night meetings, the men with guns who called themselves security, the way my father would sometimes disappear for days without explanation. But it wasn't until college that I found proof. What happened? My roommate was writing a paper on organized crime. He had newspaper clippings, police reports, and my father's name kept appearing in the margins. Max's expression darkened with the memory. I started digging, and what I found sickened me. People who'd crossed my father disappeared. Competitors had mysterious accidents. Everything I'd been given, my education, my lifestyle, was built on suffering. Samantha watched his face, seeing the genuine pain there. So you decided to leave it all behind. I tried. I finished my degree, then moved across the country, changed my name slightly, from Maxwell Hart III to just Max Hart. Got a normal job at an investment firm, lived in a normal apartment. I thought I could just walk away. He laughed bitterly. I was naive. And then you met me, Samantha said softly. Max's expression softened. Meeting you was the first time I felt like I could really have a different life. You saw me, not my family name, not my father's money, just me. For 2 years, I actually believed I'd escaped. What changed? My father found me, or rather, his men did. Max's knuckles whitened around his mug. I came home one day to find photos on our kitchen table, you at work, you shopping, you jogging in the park. There was a note. Either you come home or we bring her home. Samantha shivered, remembering those ordinary days when she'd felt someone watching her but dismissed it as paranoia. That night, I found the pregnancy test, Max continued, his voice rough. And I knew I couldn't risk staying. If they would threaten you to control me, what would they do to our child? So I made the hardest choice of my life. You left, Samantha whispered. I left, he confirmed. But not before making a deal with my father. I would return to the family business, use my finance background to help him, if he promised to leave you alone completely. And I added one condition he didn't understand, that a trust be established for you, managed by lawyers outside his influence. If you've ever had to choose between protecting someone you love and being with them, hit that like button. And if you believe that true courage sometimes means making the hardest choice imaginable, subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison for more stories of love, sacrifice, and redemption. So you went back, Samantha said, trying to imagine Max returning to a world he despised. What then? I became exactly what my father wanted, the dutiful son, the heir apparent. Max's expression hardened, but with one crucial difference. From day one, I was gathering evidence, making connections with federal agents, slowly working to dismantle everything from the inside. That sounds incredibly dangerous. It was. Max rolled up his sleeve, revealing a jagged scar that ran from his wrist to his elbow. One of my father's lieutenants suspected me 3 years in. This was my reward for clumsiness around him. Samantha instinctively reached out, her fingers hovering over the scar before she caught herself and pulled back. I can't imagine living like that for 10 years. I had motivation. Max's eyes met hers. Every time I wanted to give up, I'd look at the photos I kept hidden, the ones I had investigators take from a distance. Zane's first steps in the park. His first day of kindergarten. You at his little league games. You were watching us all along, Samantha whispered. unsure whether to feel comforted or violated by the revelation. Not in a creepy way, Max clarified quickly. Just updates. Proof that you were both safe, happy. It kept me going on the darkest days. A small sound from the hallway made them both turn. Zane stood in the doorway, his cast-covered arm held awkwardly against his chest, his eyes wide with confusion. You were a spy? He asked Max, clearly having overheard part of their conversation. Max exchanged a glance with Samantha, silently asking how much to share. She gave a small nod, no more lies. Not exactly a spy, Max said carefully, but I was working to stop some very bad people from doing bad things. Zane moved into the kitchen, sliding into the chair between them. Like a superhero with a secret identity? A smile tugged at Max's lips. A lot less exciting than that. And superheroes don't usually leave people they care about behind. Sometimes they do, Zane countered seriously, to protect them from the villains. The simple wisdom of a child cut through the complexity of adult justifications, leaving both Samantha and Max momentarily speechless. Are you hungry, sweetheart? Samantha asked, grateful for the chance to change the subject. I can make you a sandwich. Can we order pizza? Zane looked hopefully between his parents. Dad can stay for pizza, right? The word dad hung in the air, new and fragile. Max looked stunned, his composure cracking at the casual use of the title he'd never expected to hear. If your mom says it's okay, he managed, his voice rough with emotion. Samantha hesitated, torn between protecting her heart and the hopeful expression on her son's face. I suppose pizza would be good, she conceded. But then you need to rest, young man. Doctor's orders. As Max called in the order, remembering without prompting that Samantha preferred vegetarian and adding that Zane might like the same, she watched him with conflicted emotions. The man before her was both familiar and a stranger. The Max she'd loved was still visible in his mannerisms, his smile, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners. But there was a hardness to him now, a wariness that spoke of years spent looking over his shoulder. Over pizza, Zane peppered Max with questions about his life, carefully edited answers painting a picture of international business rather than dangerous undercover work. Samantha watched their interaction, noting how naturally Max engaged with his son, how attentively he listened to Zane's stories about school and baseball. You play second base? Max asked, genuine interest lighting his features. That was my position in high school. Really? Zane's eyes widened. Mom never told me that. There's a lot about your dad I didn't know myself, Samantha said quietly. A shadow passed over Max's face. I wish things had been different. After pizza and ice cream, a special treat for the injured patient, Zane's medication began to take effect, his eyelids drooping despite his determination to stay awake. Time for bed, Samantha announced, brooking no argument. You need rest to heal. Will you be here tomorrow? Zane asked Max directly, his voice small but hopeful. Max glanced at Samantha, not presuming. That's up to your mom. All eyes turned to Samantha, putting her in the impossible position of gatekeeper to both their hopes. We'll see, she said finally. Your dad and I have a lot to talk about. But you're not going away again, right? Zane pressed, his insecurity suddenly visible beneath the brave facade. No, Max said firmly, kneeling to meet his son at eye level. I'm not going anywhere. Even if I can't be here every day right away, I'm staying in your life. I promise. The conviction in his voice seemed to satisfy Zane, who allowed Samantha to lead him back to bed. When she returned to the living room, Max was standing by the mantel, examining the photographs that chronicled Zane's life and her own. You've built a beautiful life for him, he said without turning. Better than I could have given him with all my father's money. It hasn't been easy, Samantha admitted, keeping her distance. There were nights I didn't know how we'd make it to the next paycheck. Times I had to choose between fixing the car and buying new shoes he needed for school. I'm sorry the trust wasn't enough. I tried to calculate what you'd need, but it's not about the money, Max. Samantha sank onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. It's about him growing up without a father. About me raising him alone, making every decision, carrying every worry by myself. Max turned to face her, his expression pained. If I could go back. But you can't, she interrupted. None of us can. We can only go forward from here. And how do we do that? He asked quietly. What happens now? It was the question Samantha had been avoiding since the moment she heard his voice on the phone. What did happen now? Could she let this man back into their lives after 10 years of absence? Could she trust that he wouldn't disappear again, leaving even more damage in his wake? I don't know, she admitted. Part of me wants to thank you for protecting us. Another part wants to scream at you for making that decision without me. And another part. She trailed off, unwilling to voice the most dangerous feeling of all, that despite everything, some small piece of her heart still remembered what it was like to love him. I understand, Max said, moving toward the door. I've dropped a bomb on your life today. You need time. He pulled a business card from his pocket and placed it on the coffee table. My personal number. Call me if you want to talk more. At the door, he paused. For what it's worth, Sam, seeing you again. It's like finally coming home after being lost for a decade. After he left, Samantha sat in the quiet house, the business card like a live coal on her coffee table. Maxwell Hart, CEO, Hart Enterprises. A simple white card with embossed black lettering. So ordinary for something that represented such extraordinary circumstances. She checked on Zane, finding him fast asleep, his cast resting on a pillow beside him. In sleep, the resemblance to Max was even more striking, the same strong jawline, the same dark lashes against his cheeks. How had she never noticed before how much of his father lived in her son's features? Unable to sleep, Samantha made herself tea and curled up on the window seat in her bedroom, watching the quiet street below. The same street where she'd walked Zane to his first day of kindergarten, where she'd taught him to ride a bike, where she'd built a life from the ashes of her broken heart. Could she risk that hard-won peace by letting Max back in? And could she deny Zane the chance to know his father now that the danger was gone? The next morning brought no clarity, just the practical demands of caring for an injured child. Zane was subdued at breakfast, pushing his cereal around more than eating it. Does your arm hurt? Samantha asked, concerned. We can give you another pain pill. It's not that. Zane looked up, his eyes, so like Max's, serious beyond his years. Is Dad coming back today? The question she'd been dreading. I don't know, sweetheart. He left his number. I haven't called him yet. Why not? The directness of childhood cut through adult prevarication. It's complicated, Zane. Because he left us? Zane asked. Or because you're scared he'll leave again? Samantha stared at her son, startled by his perception. Both, I suppose, and because people can't just walk in and out of our lives whenever they want. There have to be boundaries. But he didn't want to leave, Zane pointed out with the simple logic of a child. The bad guys made him go away to keep us safe. Like in my comics. Real life isn't like comics, sweetheart. People make choices, and those choices have consequences. So you're punishing him? Zane's brow furrowed. Even though he was trying to help, the accusation stung, especially coming from her son. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm just being careful with our hearts. Zane considered this, then reached across the table with his good arm, placing his small hand over hers. Mom, remember when I was scared to go back to the swimming pool after I almost drowned? And you said sometimes we have to be brave and try again, even when we're scared. Samantha's throat tightened with emotion. Her own words reflected back at her through the wisdom of her child. This is different, Zane. Is it? He asked simply. You're scared, but maybe you need to be brave and try again. If you've ever received wisdom from the most unexpected source, like a child seeing clearly what adults complicate, hit that like button. And if you believe that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is open our hearts to second chances, subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison for more stories that remind us of love's enduring power. Before Samantha could respond to her son's unexpected wisdom, Her phone chimed with a text message. Unknown number, but the content made the sender clear. Zane left his favorite action figure in my car. I can drop it by this morning if that's okay. Max. She showed the message to Zane, whose face lit up. Can he come? Please, Mom. Looking at her son's hopeful expression, Samantha felt her carefully constructed walls beginning to crumble. All right, she texted back. We're home all day. An hour later, the doorbell rang. Max stood on the porch, looking less polished than yesterday. Jeans and a simple button-down replacing the expensive suit. His hair slightly tousled as if he'd run his hands through it repeatedly. Hi, he said simply, holding out the action figure. Thought he might be missing this. Dad, Zane called from behind Samantha, pushing past to greet Max with his good arm extended. You came back. I promised I would, didn't I? Max knelt to Zane's level, his expression softening. How's the arm feeling today, buddy? It itches under the cast, Zane complained. Mom says I can't stick anything down there to scratch it. Your mom's right, Max agreed, standing. But I might know a trick that helps. If it's okay with her. Samantha nodded, stepping back to allow him inside. The domesticity of the scene, Max helping Zane with his cast, their heads bent together in identical poses of concentration, created an ache in her chest for what might have been. There, Max said, showing Zane how to tap gently on the cast to create vibrations that relieved the itching. Better. Way better. Zane beamed. Mom, can Dad stay for lunch? I want to show him my baseball trophies and my science project. Samantha hesitated, then nodded. I suppose that would be all right. As Zane led Max on a tour of his room, proudly showing off the evidence of his 10 years of life, Samantha prepared sandwiches in the kitchen, her mind racing. This easy familiarity between father and son was both beautiful and terrifying. Beautiful because it was everything she'd ever wanted for Zane. Terrifying because it made Max's absence all the more painful in retrospect. When they returned, Zane was chattering excitedly about his upcoming science fair. Dad says he can help me make my volcano way cooler with real chemical reactions instead of just baking soda. Does he now? Samantha raised an eyebrow at Max. All safe, non-toxic reactions, Max assured her quickly. I majored in chemistry before switching to finance, remember? She did remember. Their second date had been at a science museum where Max had impressed her with his knowledge of chemical compounds, explaining exhibits with boyish enthusiasm. It was the first time she'd seen beyond his reserved exterior to the passionate intellect beneath. Over lunch, the conversation flowed more easily than Samantha had expected. Max asked Zane about school, his friends, his interests, genuinely listening to the answers, drawing connections, showing real interest in the person his son had become. You're really good at math, Max observed after Zane mentioned winning the school's math competition. That must come from your mom. She was always brilliant with numbers. Actually, his teacher says he has an intuitive understanding of mathematical concepts that's unusual, Samantha said. I always thought he got that from you. The acknowledgement that Zane had inherited positive traits from his father hung between them, a small olive branch extended. After lunch, Zane's medication made him drowsy again. Will you still be here when I wake up? He asked Max as Samantha helped him to his room. If your mom doesn't mind, Max replied, looking to Samantha for guidance. We'll be here, she assured Zane, tucking him in for a nap. When she returned to the living room, Max was standing by the window, looking out at the quiet neighborhood street. Thank you, he said without turning, for letting me be here today. Zane wants you here, Samantha said simply. And you? Max turned to face her. What do you want, Sam? The question was direct, unavoidable. Samantha sank onto the couch, gathering her thoughts. I want to understand, she said finally. I want to know everything that happened in those 10 years. Not just the sanitized version you told Zane. Max nodded, taking a seat across from her. Where should I start? The day you left, Samantha said. What happened after you walked out our door? For the next hour, Max laid bare the past decade of his life, returning to his father's organization, the dangerous game he played gathering evidence while appearing loyal, the constant fear of discovery. He described building a legitimate side to Hart Enterprises while simultaneously working with federal agents to dismantle the criminal operations. The worst part wasn't the danger, he admitted. It was knowing what I'd given up, watching you both from a distance, unable to be part of your lives. If your father was so dangerous, how did you manage to set up the trust for us without him knowing? I had help, Max explained. My mother's brother, my Uncle James, never approved of my father's business. He helped me establish the trust through channels my father couldn't trace. Your uncle, Samantha repeated. The one you said died when you were in college? Another lie I had to tell you, Max admitted. I'm sorry, Sam. There were so many lies, all to keep my world separate, to keep you safe. And now, Samantha asked the question that had been haunting her. Your father is dead, his organization dismantled. What happens now, Max? Now I run Hart Enterprises legitimately, he said. We're focused on sustainable development, medical research, education initiatives. I'm trying to use the family fortune to heal some of the damage my father caused. And personally? Samantha pressed. What do you want from us, from me? Max leaned forward, his expression earnest. I want to be Zane's father, really be his father, not just a name on a birth certificate or a shadow watching from a distance. I want to be there for his games, his school events, his everyday life. And me, Samantha's voice was barely audible. You, Max's voice softened. I want whatever you're willing to give, Sam. Friendship, co-parenting, or more. I never stopped loving you. But I know I lost the right to expect anything when I walked away. The raw honesty in his voice made Samantha's carefully maintained defenses waver. I can't just pick up where we left off. Max, too much has happened. I'm not asking for that, he assured her. I'm asking for a chance to start again, to build something new, at whatever pace feels right. Before Samantha could respond, her phone rang, the school principal, calling about Zane's accident report. By the time she finished the call, Zane was awake, and the moment for private conversation had passed. The afternoon slipped into evening, with Max staying for dinner, helping prepare it this time, moving around Samantha's kitchen with careful respect for her space. The three of them fell into a rhythm that felt both new and strangely familiar, as if some part of them remembered being a family even though they never truly had been. After Zane went to bed, Max helped Samantha clean up, the domestic task creating a comfortable silence between them. I should go, he said finally, drying his hands on a kitchen towel. I've imposed on your day enough. You haven't imposed, Samantha said, surprising herself with the admission. Zane loves having you here. And you? Max asked again, his eyes searching hers. Samantha took a deep breath. I'm still processing everything, but I'm glad you told me the truth. Finally. At the door, Max paused. There's a baseball game this weekend, professional, not little league. I have tickets. I thought maybe Zane might like to go. With both of us, if you're comfortable with that. The invitation hung between them, not just an outing with their son, but a first tentative step toward something more. I think he'd like that, Samantha said. I think I might like it too. Max's smile, genuine, hopeful, tinged with disbelief at his good fortune, reminded her of the young man she'd fallen in love with years ago. Saturday at noon? I can pick you both up. Saturday at noon, she confirmed. After he left, Samantha stood on the porch, watching his car disappear down the street. The future stretched before her, uncertain but no longer empty. The man who had shattered her heart a decade ago had returned, not with grand gestures or empty promises, but with truth, patience, and a willingness to rebuild what had been broken. 3 months later, Samantha sat in the bleachers of Zane's Little League field, watching her son take his position at second base. Beside her, Max leaned forward intently, his focus entirely on their child. He's improved so much since his cast came off, Max observed proudly. That double play last inning was textbook perfect. He practices constantly, Samantha said. Having you work with him has made a huge difference. Their relationship had evolved cautiously over the weeks: baseball games, science fair preparations, family dinners that gradually felt less awkward and more natural. Max had been true to his word, never pushing, always respectful of the boundaries Samantha established. "Sam," Max said quietly, his eyes still on the field where Zane was preparing for the next batter. "I've been thinking about something." She turned to look at him, noting the serious set of his jaw. "I'm selling the Hart Mansion, my father's house. Too many ghosts, too many bad memories." "That makes sense," Samantha nodded. "Where will you go?" "I found a place," Max said carefully. "It's in this neighborhood, actually, about 3 blocks from your house. Close enough that Zane could walk between homes easily when he's with me, but not so close that you'd feel crowded." The implication was clear. Max was planning for a future where he was permanently part of their lives, where co-parenting meant regular transitions between homes. "You're really staying," Samantha said, the reality finally sinking in completely. "I told you I wasn't going anywhere this time." Max's hand found hers on the bleacher between them, his touch tentative, questioning. "Is that okay?" Samantha looked at their joined hands, then up at the man who had once broken her heart trying to save her life. The man who had spent 10 years fighting his way back to them. The man who now coached their son's baseball team, helped with science projects, and looked at her sometimes with the same wonder he had a decade ago. "Yes," she said, turning her hand to lace her fingers through his. "I think it's more than okay." On the field, Zane glanced toward the bleachers, his face breaking into a wide grin when he saw his parents together. He gave them a quick wave before turning his attention back to the game, secure in the knowledge that both would be there when it ended. The 911 call that had reunited them 3 months ago had indeed shattered Samantha's carefully constructed world. But from those broken pieces, something stronger was slowly being rebuilt, not the fairy tale romance of their youth, but something more enduring. A family forged through separation and sacrifice, truth and forgiveness, and the courage to try again. If you believe that sometimes the most beautiful beginnings come after the most painful endings, hit that like button. And if this story of sacrifice, redemption, and second chances touched your heart, subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison for more stories that remind us of love's power to heal even the deepest wounds. Remember, my friends, true love isn't about perfect people or perfect circumstances. It's about finding someone who will fight for you when it matters most, even if that fight means walking away to keep you safe. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, it's about finding the courage to open your heart again when they finally find their way home. Until next time, this is Mr. Harrison, reminding you that some love stories aren't finished. They're just waiting for their next chapter to begin.